Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Doghouse Chats with me and Matt. Obviously, the two, what are we saying these days? OGs of Physique Collective. But as you can see, sandwiched in the middle is Big Rick Boundy. Do you have like a business slogan that you'd use? I could say like from... You do have a...
No Limits Performance.
No Limits,
is a
that's
business name, yeah.
From No Limits. I just got a little
No fixed
stroke
address.
of the knee there as well.
Lucky I shaved my legs.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I even need to shave mine.
Zero.
Anyway, we're already on to the nonsense. So, as you guys know, about once a month, me and Matt get together and just run through a list of, we'll say, topics that have come up the most frequently in the last month. We may have already covered these on Physique Collective in terms of like short form, informative videos, but we go a little bit more in depth on this one for you guys that seem to like the, what do you call it? Long form listen on YouTube. So that's what we're going to do. So diving straight in, we were just talking about an interesting topic that I've been thinking a lot about recently myself. Something that I have, I don't want to say suffered with because it's not like a suffering, but that I've noticed is a character trait that is distressing for me, and I've had literally all my life, but something that exists infectiously amongst bodybuilders, which is decision fatigue. And one of the greatest attributes of having a coach in your corner, we can discuss their abilities to program training, nutrition, PEDs, whatever their experience of prepping individuals or taking individuals through off seasons and things like that. But even aside from that, the great value that comes from removing decision fatigue from some people. And just to kind of encase this in an example is that like me now, there's no reason why I need a coach to tell me to do anything. I need a jiu-jitsu coach. But like aside from that, I don't need to be told how to eat maintenance calories, train with maintenance volume and things like that. But my obsession with optimality is something that I thought that I'd be able to shake when I stopped the sort of body composition journey. I thought it would just kind of fade away. But it insidiously creeps in my mind about the silliest things like exercise selection or volume per session. And it's this, and it causes me stress. So recently I asked Matt to take over my resistance training. I said, I just want you to write something. I'm just going to follow it. I'm not even going to think about it. But like even then, when you sent it through, I was like, oh, I do 2 hours of jiu-jitsu on that day, so I might put the delt work there, and then because of that, I think I'll move the ab work back. And then in the end, I went, no,
What we're doing?
you're doing exactly the same thing, trying to optimize.
Yeah.
Which is why I seen that voice note yesterday. Like, right, I've been and seen the shoulder specialist now because if you're watching this, I'm recently ruptured my supraspinatus, so great timing for me to get a new training program. I was like, no. I'm not even going to think about this. I'm going to look at it and just do it. But anyway, I've rambled a lot about myself there. So the value of having a coach and even a coach having a coach, but extrapolated across everything across your life, no matter what it is, what you're going to eat for dinner, who's going to cook it and how are they going to cook it, what you're going to wear.
I think we're all guilty. I mean, fuck me, we've both, well, Rick's coached by you now, I used to be coached by you. It's not like we don't know what we're doing, right? I think we all, as coaches, we'd like to think we know what we're doing. But as I said to you earlier, Joe, the stuff that makes us a good coach makes us the shittest thing at coaching ourselves. Because we're always looking for that, how can I 1% this? How can I just make this a little bit better? And in essence, you end up just completely spinning your wheels. Because you're going, oh, if I just change this, then how do you logbook that? Right? You're constantly moving the exercise selection around. How do you logbook that? You can't progress. And you end up getting stressed. And I've been there before when you're just making no progress because you just, not like actively stressed, not like losing sleep over it necessarily, but it's playing on your mind. And you've only got so many hours of the day and you end up just losing it in that thing. And I've been using the example of meal plans. Like meal plans get shit on all the time. I fucking love a meal plan.
Yeah,
I've got to think about it. When you're as busy as we are, you're thinking, how can I buy back as much time as possible? I don't want to. I automate as much of things in my life as I can. And training, nutrition, all those. The less I have to think about it, the better off I'm going to be.
100%. Yeah, the meal plan's a great example because we went through, I don't know if we're kind of still in this now, but social media like bastardization of meal plans from coaches. Like, it doesn't teach your client anything.
You're going to get an eating disorder.
Yeah.
I see it switching for sure.
Yeah. Whereas like you said, like for me, like I need a meal plan, and I just give it to Jazz and say, just cook me this food, and I don't want to think about a single thing, because I don't know about you guys, but like, I'll think about something like that for days.
Oh yeah, I'll drag it. And then like you have the quote unquote perfect thing set up. Then you might listen to a podcast with something that resonates with you. And you're like, oh no, I need to bring this in now. I can't wait. And then that, you know, the consistency over time is what's going to drive the progress. You never truly know what's working. And I've found that with you like so much as well, like the removal of what am I going to do so I can focus on higher priority tasks like coaching my clients or just having time free to relax and earthing and things like that.
But again, in terms of like actual ROI, right? The most important thing is you actually progressively overloading in the gym. That everything else pales in comparison to some degree to that. So the fact that you're just able to now go in and go, I'm going to go and smash when the shoulder's better, I'm going to go and smash my session.
He still did it today.
Yeah, I did manage to get, oh God, I managed to do like a set of dumbbell overhead press with like a really small range. And I got Rick to pass me the dumbbell, and I can only imagine what it looked like. It was like, every rep was like getting shot in the shoulder. I was literally like,
It was painful.
Joe's fucking taking it. And even that, like, as an example, I programmed to Joe, I said, look, I think you maybe benefit from just a meso of overhead press. That's like evidence-based to some degree. It's not is, but like a lot of people run away from that sort of movement.
Probably not great utility for hypertrophy.
But I'm like, I actually think you get a lot out of this. You probably enjoy it. Yeah. And like, there's an element of that of just let's have a bit of novelty, enjoy your training, and you're probably going to get something out of that.
You've mentioned two things there. Exercise variation and novelty was another thing that I wanted to speak about on a specific level. So maybe let's house that for now. But yeah, along the lines of decision fatigue, like I couldn't possibly recommend, and this isn't like me selling myself as a coach because I don't need any more clients anyway, but the value of just even outsourcing something like that. Like for a while, I had Dean McKillop just doing my nutrition when I was, it was like I coached Dean for ages and then he stopped bodybuilding. I was like, mate, I'm kind of sick of like deciding when to change my calories and stuff like that. And I just followed it blindly for ages. And I just didn't think, didn't think about it for such a long time. So, if you are, I think this goes for anybody really, especially if you're somebody that's like prone to over-analysis, then it's so worthwhile. And I mean, consider the statistical significance of the potential difference of that optimization. It's probably untraceable. Yeah. Like if you're going to like hammer through a training program, make it as optimal as possible versus something that's probably 90 to 95% there, if we can even define what optimality is, or what are we basing that on, what outcome and for who, and based on what results of what, we can't even get there. And then it might, the statistical significance is probably, if anything, 1 to 2%, and you've wasted so much of your life trying to get there, and you'll change it again in 10 minutes.
And the thing as well that I think it's also almost like heresy to say this bit is we aren't actually looking for optimal outcomes. We're looking for the best return on investment. Like, none of us want to sacrifice everything in our life for every single minutia of hypertrophy. So if you've got a client who's going for a pro card, going for maybe the Olympia stage, those things are on the table, right? It doesn't become efficiency, it becomes maximal outcomes. For us, it's like, why am I worrying about this gym session, which is 45 minutes to an hour of my day? I'm losing how many hours thinking about that thing when it doesn't actually matter. Like, obviously, we all want to get outcomes, but when we put it into like order of hierarchy in our life, where does training outcomes come? It comes probably like 4th or 5th, 6th down the list.
Yeah, what's the name of the concept that describes 80%?
Pareto's Law.
Pareto's Law. Yeah, I was thinking of Pascal's wager, but I think Pascal's wager, is that not believing in God is a good wager, because if you die and he doesn't exist, then you're fine.
That sounds
if he
right.
does,
I don't actually know that one.
You're quite right. So to bring things on to where that leads us to is something else I was thinking about just this morning, because I was reading some posts on Instagram about exercise variation. And I think if I'm going to kind of sum up the litany of comments that was on there and put it into what I think is a workable concept that offers the best of everything, we obviously need some degree of exercise variation. You shouldn't train just like one exercise per body part, because there's various regions of muscle bellies that need to be hit with different exercises. For example, hack squat and a leg extension, you're going to maximize. You might need to have something more mid-loaded like a leg press. I don't know, arguable, but no one's picking just one exercise per body part, right? At the same time, you don't want to have so much variation that it becomes impossible to logbook, and you're just kind of chasing novelty. But what I think most people know that, but what I really wanted to talk about was novelty through variation as an enjoyment tool, and also the fact that there is some research that Dr. Scott Stevenson includes in the Fortitude Training book that exercise variation can cause increases in hypertrophy outcomes. I don't know the details of that study, but for example, the way I quite like to do things, I've always loved doing this. Let's say that push session today. I've got the nitro press, which is logbooked. I'm going to do that every week on that day, etc. I've got the dumbbell overhead press, that's logbooked. Now, after that, I've got fly, lateral raise, and a tricep movement, right? Or it's a bicep movement, but let's say tricep in this push day. You could, I would say again, without sacrificing outcomes, just pick a variation that you like that doesn't have to be the same each week. For each of those, we'll say accessory exercises, keep a loose leaf logbook. Like I use heavy set, and I'm not going to rotate so many exercises that I'm not going to revisit them every few weeks or something. And you can get some enjoyment out of that. Like there's a lot of movements I can't do at the minute because of my shoulder. But I can move some things around. I don't necessarily have to logbook it. And now that was quite an extreme example I gave there. The way Dr. Scott does it is like you can pick your muscle rounds. Two days of the week, you're picking muscle rounds. They're not the set movements. As long as you've got, I would say, like at least an A-B rotation, 2 exercises per body part per week or per rotation or whatever, that you're logbooking and progressing over time. Fill in your additional volume with things that you can find variety in, whether it be sometimes you do straight sets, you fancy doing some rest pause work. You know, you fancy doing some BFR work because something feels a bit, especially if you've got an injury and you're working around it, don't be afraid to pick things up. And I think we've gone down this road and we should of being like so strict with progressive overload and exercise selection. But it is fun to mix it up.
This actually is something I've done early days when I first started coaching, and I signed up to like Layne Norton's like workout builder.
Yeah.
And he did have like, it was like the first 3 exercises you couldn't change. And those were like primary builders, like focus on progressive overload on them. And then there was like a drop down box where it didn't give you like 20 options, because I think that'll probably create the decision fatigue we were talking about before. But it gave you like 3 options for each like similar movement pattern. And I did find that enjoyable. It's definitely that balancing act though of like, how much do you sub out? Do you change it every single week, or is it a rotation? Yeah.
I do think it's fun to like, especially for body parts like arms or a shrug variation or a lateral raise variation.
I think the data on the hypertrophy outcomes, I think, and I might be bastardising this, someone's going to watch this and I'm like, you're fucking wrong. But I think it's when it's self-selected, there's a higher level of motivation and you get better outcomes from it. I'm sure, because I've seen times where participants have self-selected the workout for the day. So these are your workouts you do in a week, and they self-select on the day, and you get better outcomes when you've chosen it.
I've seen this firsthand with clients as well. Like before their new training phase comes out, I'll always ask like, what movements do you really want included? Yeah. What movements would you like hate
Would you fucking
if I put in there?
Yeah.
And then I find by building that out, there's that enjoyment. And for sure, like I understand the optimality of like keeping things consistent, progressive overload. But when Joe like wrote up my new program recently, like I was like a kid in a candy store reading through everything. I'm like, fuck yeah, like can't wait. And
Yeah.
I think on the variety thing as well, the only negative to it is like too much. It's like where do you go to then? Like
this is it.
Say it stalls out, what happens then? Like I pick sort of, for my personal training, for 4 chest exercises, for example, a week, because I've then got movements I can rotate to. If I had 10 different ones on like an A-B rotation, like say something stalls, where the fuck do I go?
Well, that's why you need your key fundamentals.
exactly
in there.
that,
Like if I was going to use the training program you just wrote me, and I think this works best where, like, let's use delts because we were talking about lateral raise variation. Like your stable, high output movements that are like earlier in the session, they're the ones that you're going to want to keep key. So, for example, before lower body, you've got a lateral raise for me twice a week. So there, I would put like a lying cuff lateral and a lying cuff crucifix or Y raise kind of thing. So they're very stable. They're not moving. And then twice a week, on other days, on like the push day and on the upper day, there's another lateral raise variation, but they're unilateral and they're more length and range focus. So, more muscle damage with them being length and range focus and unilateral. So they're going to be more damaging in nature. They're less stable. So those two things that come like later in the workout, I wouldn't see a problem with a client like just kind of picking and choosing those two. And how many variations can you have of a lateral raise? Well, but then having those two in there, right? They're progressive.
Even that, I said to you, which one do you prefer? Because I think that's what I'll do with clients. I've got a structure. This is how I want you to, like, based on your physiology, your goals, everything like that. But then I'll say, have you got a chest press you like? Have you got a pull down that you like? And sometimes it might be like, okay, we'll tweak that because it's not quite what I want. But we've all got, we could go into the gym, we're like, that's the one I like.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the one if I took that out of your workout, like you said, if you take that out of someone's workout, you're like, motherfucker, I hate that.
And they're probably going to do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let people do it, because I think I've certainly gone through a transition with my own programming where it's like optimal only, bro. And over time, I'm just like, there is an absolute time and place for that, but it's also kind of going, fuck, I love that.
I think you're talking more about preference than variation there.
But I think it's both, though.
I think, like, for example, if they've got a nitro flat press and a hammer strength flat press, like, we know the resistance profile of the nitro shits all over the hammer strength. Hammer strength presses are terrible.
Yeah,
unless you're 10, I was going to say, unless you're your height.
Well, the profile is always going to suck for training the pecs. Yeah. But if the client says, I love the hammer strength routine, I get so revved up to hit that. I've been progressively overloading on it. It gets me fired up. I mean, you're an idiot if you take it out. Because, like, at the end of the day, you need a motivated client that's enjoying their sessions. That has to come before anything else, or they're not going to do that. Like, the most optimal program in the world, it ain't going to work if your client hates doing it, because they're not going to be adherent over the long term, and they're not going to be progressively overloading for a long time. But also variation around injuries or people involved in other sports, I think, is a good idea. Like, for example, I can do behind the body lateral raises sometimes. If I've had a hard roll, I noticed this in my last training block, like, I was training delts on a Tuesday, and on Monday night, I was doing like an hour of gi and an hour of no gi. Sometimes I'd be cool. Sometimes, depending on how the rolls were, I'd be really jammed up in the shoulders, and I wouldn't be able to do the behind the body. So I'd just switch it up. Maybe I'll do unilateral in front with a slight twist away, so I'm still length and focus. And I'd logbook it each time, and every time I come back round to the one I can do, I'm just trying to progress it. And then I'm not like, I've got to do that thing. It's going to bloody, rip my shoulders apart.
It's like what I think Eric Helms talks about it, is it like the rigid flexibility when it comes to nutrition. Like having that approach where, like, you can be fluid and not freaking out like, I can't do this behind the back lateral raise, and then, like, that stress of, like, I can't do the optimal thing.
I've got any raspberries, fuck.
Legit, like, just eat blueberries, it's fine. And I do have that built in as well, like with nutrition for clients. Like, I don't do like just meal plans and I don't do just macros. I usually give the option of both. And then you're welcome to bounce between both of them. So that way you've got that freedom. And then having, like you mentioned before, like that freedom to decide, you're more likely to own that decision. And it's like that, what's the word? Like that empowering sensation of like,
you
have a say,
isn't it?
The
only time I would sort of argue against variety is if, actually in a similar boat to you, where you bounce around loads of gyms. Because how do you logbook that? Because I've been in a position where we've done a lot of traveling. And you know what I do? I always go back to like, what's in every gym? Barbells, dumbbells, I can track that. Or of course, like with the isolation movements, you can sort of go to town. But I move it more towards less variety because every gym's got it.
There's going to be some variety.
Exactly that, Like we all know metal plates work way more than plastic plates, right? We all know that.
100%. 100%. Kills me every time. That's Cybex this morning. Every time.
But that's the only time I would argue again. Or if you're fucking, like, say you're a powerlifter, you want to be a little bit more specific. But obviously that goes outside the hypertrophy chat.
We're talking about going outside the hypertrophy realms. I would like to ask you, because you do have a background in like sports performance prior to you working more in hypertrophy, whereas me, I've only ever been interested and involved in hypertrophy training until recently. So when someone is crossing over, or a client comes to you with like, now let's talk about crossing over, I reckon, because I think our viewership is like, well, they're pretty much purely hypertrophy, but if they are going to a place where they want to keep training for hypertrophy, but they've picked up another sport, whatever it may be, what are the first kind of things that you're considering when it comes to program design, whether it be exercise selection or volume and things like that? Do you like look at the sport and try to mimic maybe planes that they're working in and getting stronger in those and things like that?
So I've not been involved in sport for a long time, guys, so I might be a little bit behind on the research here, so no one come and crucify me. But essentially, all weight training is GPP, general physical preparation. So it's not actually the sport. And oftentimes you'll see strength coaches in the game like, got to do a clean and jerk because it's sport specific. I'm like, it ain't. Like there's a speed strength element to that, but essentially even a jump, even a fast movement, it's never going to be the same as a sport because you can't mimic the speed and stuff that you play in the sport. So there was a really good example I can think of American football a while back because I was pretty obsessed with that. So Penn State University, they only ever had all their entire strength team. They never squatted, which is like heresy in strength and conditioning. They just got them to do half rep leg press. So all we need is strong hip and knee extensors.
Yeah.
So that's all we need for this. So there is obviously an element where we want stability, mobility. We not just want to work in one plane. But at the same time, you can go too far. You can see people do ladder drills and they're doing like jumping with dumbbells to the side. It's like you can take things too far. So from a general basic sense, we're not trying to go like too far down the rabbit hole. I would just encourage people train at good long muscle lengths, train in different planes which aren't, and don't think about mimicking the sport per se. Just think about training your body to work in different ranges, but ideally full range, because we know from an injury prevention and kind of sport power production outcome, increased range of motions, obviously provided with the caveat that you're able to get into those ranges, is probably going to lead to better outcomes.
Yeah. The range of motion's interesting. I was talking with you about this earlier. Like, I was sort of edging towards not length and partials on everything, but definitely like biasing that range and like somewhat avoiding the squeezy stuff. Whereas I've noticed in jiu-jitsu, like being able to be strong up here, and if I was doing a lateral raise or a Y raise previously, I might sort of get that mid, like lengthen to mid, and I would notice I'd be strong in those positions, but I'm not strong overhead and things like that. If I'm like bumping someone from mount and like getting them over my head, it's like up there, it's like it all falls apart.
But it's also an injury risk thing. Like if you've got no exposure to a range, you're probably more likely to get injured in that range. Yeah. Like you see it all the time when I was speaking to a client this morning and he previously to working, he's got injured. And what happened, he was doing Smith bench and stopping like here, because that was his active range. And he's like, I want to increase my range. And he's ended up coming down a lot further, but not reducing the load. And obviously he's ran into a minor pec tear. I was like, well, that's you're at a range that you've never experienced before. And obviously in sport being so unpredictable, you want to have some exposure to that range.
That's why, that was always I should probably preface this with the fact that I'm not a biomechanics expert and I'm happy to be wrong on this, but I don't want to say criticism, but my thought with the active range stuff, although that seems to have died a death now, I don't see anybody talking about it anymore, was what happens when you do go in those ranges. Let's say you're on a leg press and you've really avoided that, exceeding that range of knee flexion that starts to kind of kink your hips into flexion a little bit. It's like, what happens if one day you do move that extra inch? You're just going to like break apart.
I think that's always probably a bit of nuance, isn't it? Like there's certain ranges I can't get into without pain. I'll try and expose myself to that to some degree, but there is ultimately I've got my own joint structure which might stop me getting into that. If I can get as strong as far into that range as I can, I'm probably going to be as healthy as I can. It says the man who's got a million injuries, but that's not my fault.
Yeah, no, I'm sat here talking about it. I can't even move my arm.
Yeah, touch wood wherever that is, because I've been okay.
I've got 8 years on you, mate. I've got a lot of time.
We're nearly
there.
But
I think just, again, taking a pinch of salt with the range side of things, but certainly if you get strong, mobile, fit, you're setting yourself up, and then you do the sport to get good at the demands of the sport.
Yeah, great.
Because I think a lot of people would probably try like tick all the boxes with their training when it's like so much of it is literally just doing the thing.
Well, we've seen it all the time. In throwing sports, people were trying to like, with shot put, throw a heavier load, and you can end up losing the mechanics of actually throwing the shot correctly and a heavier javelin. And I don't know, there was a place for that, like absolutely. But when you change how you're doing a movement, you're no longer doing the skill.
And it throws off the skill,
Yeah, I think, like you say, there's definitely nuance to it. Because now sort of being more in the BJJ realm, and I've watched how people in my gym train, some of it is insane. Like, and I do think for the most part, just getting strong in stable, low risk environments, like you say, like traditional hypertrophy is a good idea. maybe worth throwing in some things like loaded spinal flexion and extension. Yeah, great. Like some Jefferson curls or something, or like unilateral work or overhead work and things like that. Unilateral work for the quads and things like that is a good idea. Maybe to some less stable exercise in place, but that doesn't mean like doing
Bosu squats.
Loaded. Have you seen like the weighted shrimps and
Yeah.
things like that, or these like real heavy rotation with a cable?
There's that guy in
Functional.
America, isn't it, who does all those entertaining, like training.
Oh, the
videos.
mega big dude that's
Yeah.
also mad fast. He's impressive. Are we talking about the same person?
No, I'm thinking of he's a coach on YouTube, and I think he coaches a lot
I know
of
who you're talking
NFL
about.
players.
Yeah, Dr. Mike's done a few.
yeah, that one.
What's his name? Joel Seedman.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, him, yeah.
Don't squat past 90 degrees.
Yeah.
What happens if you do squat past 90 degrees?
I've been doing that for years.
The world
I've been
implodes.
Well, that's what the criticism against this Penn State one was, a leg press. But what they were saying is, look, we can teach everyone, because they've obviously got a fucking massive football team, right? They might have 150 players on the squads, like across it. They go, we can teach everyone how to do this in no space of time, no time at all.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always been in favour of like jumps over Olympic lifts, because there's no skill component. Anyone can jump, right? But to teach you how to clean and jerk is a skill. Why do you want to spend time doing that skill when you spend more time doing the sport?
doing the thing. Yeah.
It's like, imagine if I said, Joe, right, you're going to have to learn how to clean and jerk. You're like, I'm trying to learn BJJ. What the fuck? Another sport.
You know what I've learned? The only way to get better at BJJ is to train BJJ. Like there's no cardio. I don't think that will get you better at rolling for like 10-minute rounds.
No.
Or even 5-minute rounds.
Well, there's a thing in sport, and they used to say that the longer the sport, the more your explosiveness or genetic component that matters less.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you're never going to have a sprinter who's like, I was really slow at school.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's never going to happen. Whereas a cricket player doesn't have to be particularly athletic in relation to a shot putter.
In Australia, a lot of them would be like go on the pub the night
Exactly
before
that, yeah.
and then
I mean, look at
no sleep
Shane
and then
Warne,
they
like,
make
right?
100. Yeah, like Warney, smoking darts in there.
Yeah, he was like, I'm never going to go to the gym. But
Darts is cigarettes if you're not from Australia. I don't know if that's
I didn't have a clue what that.
I twigged it. Right? But there's less of a genetic component to it because he's really fucking good at the sport. And I mean physical genetic component. You don't have to be as athletic, and that's why I think sports like cricket got a bit shunned on. But again, look at an offensive lineman in the NFL. Quite a hefty dude, obviously big, like, but they're not. I wouldn't say that the most athletic on the team, but they're so fucking good at the job.
Have you heard of a BJJ competition called High Rollers?
No.
I like the sound of it already.
I
though.
think
Yeah,
it's
it sounds cool.
I think it's in the Netherlands.
Sounds
or
like a
something.
club I
Like
wanna
you've
be.
got to get high. To
Oh
roll.
fuck! Okay.
Yeah, and then if you win like a pound of bud.
I hate weed, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, I
mind
would
getting
not be
that.
in.
You wouldn't be able to get it home either, would you? If you'd have to smoke it all before you go.
There's a
No chance.
there's a thing I think they do in London. Where it's like they do I think it's a half marathon. They drink a pint after each lap or something stupid like that.
It sounds like something Aussies would do as
Yeah,
well.
it sounds awful.
Imagine if they did that, like every lap you got to do 50 milligrams of cat. How many laps would you get?
Every lap, every lap,
How they'd be running.
half a lap.
You're asking how many I do in reality or in my own head?
Yeah, halfway through the second lap and everyone's just running slower. Fourth lap, everyone's literally running in slow motion.
Well, essentially, that's doing its job. It's a tranquilizer for
Yeah.
racing horses, I assume.
Fuck me. We've managed to go completely segued off sport-specific training.
It's beginning.
to
It's
cat, yeah.
beginning.
Oh, well, that'll make a good reel.
Horse racing, same.
Fuck me.
Well, now we're talking down the sports line. I'd be interested because you were involved in sports, right?
I
To some
was
degree.
I was played at a I played at a decent level. I would never have made it. I know that for fucking sure. But I was S&C coaching, like interning, and I was starting to get into that world when I had to quit with some family issues. So I've done some S&C work and been around that kind of, yeah.
I'd be interested because I've got a new found kind of outlook and experience on this. It's like what your experience of drug use, PED use was in those sports.
I'm going to have to be careful what I talk about here. So, because
Come on, man. I'm gonna tell all. I'm just not gonna name names.
I think it's people seem to think it's like really almost like hidden. All this, the coaches don't fucking know. Like realistically, the coaches don't like. And well, certainly my experience wasn't that they knew. There were players who got caught when I was there, and drugs testers did turn up, and players disappeared all of a sudden, right? But it was mainly like the academy boys. It wasn't anyone that was necessarily involved in first team. And look, I'm not so naive to think that when money's involved and prestige is involved and people have got short careers, they're not going to take performance-enhancing drugs. Of course they are. But it was always kind of the running joke, certainly in the rugby sphere, was, oh, got to take growth hormone, got to take growth hormone. And like, everyone's like, oh, he's on the growth. Blah, blah. No one's really talking about anabolics. And I think you see the size of these guys, but a lot of them are just massive dudes. Like, you have to kind of remember that.
It's like they're born to be a rugby. They don't look like a rugby player because of what they do. They are a rugby player because of the way they look, kind of thing.
I've been around it long enough, and certainly like the Chiefs boys, seen around like various different clubs. You think bodybuilders are big until you see like a professional second row,
especially the Islanders.
Yeah, and you think that's just different. It's different. It's a different look. It's less, they've obviously got more body fat. They've got just built.
They've got more body mass.
Yeah, they're just big dudes. And you're not necessarily like, when you look at pro rugby players, the ones that stand out are the ones that got the classic V taper, big quads, but that's not necessarily all of them. You'll see some of them, obviously the New Zealand guys are typically built like that, but a lot of the best players that you'll see, like the best props, they've got a bit of fat, they've got a lot of contact, they need something to kind of bounce off that. Didn't necessarily see as much PED use as you would imagine.
So it'd be more so, instead of it like being that the team is organising for everyone, you have to do this stack. It's like the individual goes out on their own. They want to get that edge.
Yeah, you hear these, again, I hear all these stories about UK academies, players come back, they put on 20 pounds. You hear the same in like New Zealand and Oz. I don't know how true that is. Like, my personal experience was, I'm sure some people are using it, but there's also a lot to lose. So I look at these players, and having been around them, I'm not sat there going, you're fucking enormous. Like, they're just big guys, not like stupid level of muscularity. Once you kind of equate it for fat mass, lean mass, I'm sure they'd probably be on the top end because these guys are genetic freaks. But they haven't got like a fat-free mass index of like 30. And you're like, oh my God, he's definitely using. They'd be like flirting with like 24, 25 on some occasions maybe. But I've never really
do you think it'd be more so on the realm of like healing peptides? Like that would
probably,
be more
you're not going to
use?
get caught, And again, because there's such a big skill component in a lot of these games, like rugby, despite obviously it's a very physical sport, especially in the forwards, huge skill component. Backs, huge skill component. That's going to be a big factor. Now, in sports like shot put, I obviously never been involved in that, but fuck me, the world record is still held by a guy who failed 4 drugs tests. And that world record was set in like 1984. So like, obviously the shorter the sport, the more drugs. And we know that from 100 meters, we know that from all these other things. That's when I'd be looking at it, not necessarily in the professional sport.
So they'd be taking advantage of that like sort of potential explosiveness they could
Exactly.
get.
Have you listened to the recent Joe Rogan podcast with the 2 guys that run the Enhanced Games?
No.
So up to this point, I think I'd only gotten like a jovial response on the Enhanced Games. It seemed like something that was a bit of a joke, like, oh, these 2 millionaires.
There was memes going around Instagram.
Yeah, but you know, you hear them both talk, and actually, it's a very rational argument that they project there, and there's little intricacies in the reasons why they're doing it, which is pretty profound in terms of shifting opinions on it when you listen to it. For example, they're not doing drug tests, but they're doing health tests.
Okay.
Their athletes have to get comprehensive blood work, cardiac MRI, etc., and they have to be within these specific ranges or they can't compete. They can only use drugs that are FDA approved, and they all have to be doctor prescribed and assessed.
Would they bring that into bodybuilding?
Well, if they did, then nothing would likely change,
No.
other than the kind of research chemical use would come down. But I thought that was pretty compelling. And other things they're doing is like actually paying the athletes, which the Olympics doesn't do.
Let's ride that pride card.
Yeah. And doing all kinds of interesting things, like because of social media, they're having various stadiums across the world rather than having everything happen in one kind of city. Like, yeah, I know that's completely separate to the top, but I thought interesting is because it's similar to the way a lot of like structures are moving now. Like universities are losing applicants and losing money because more people are going towards these other online qualifications that can accredit much cheaper and offer additional outcomes. And then, you know, people have more. In fact, what's the new BJJ that Craig, his name?
Craig Jones.
Yeah, Craig Jones. He's just like offering more money.
Yeah.
Different
He's
outcomes.
decentralizing. It's like the same as Bitcoin.
Decentralizing is the word I was looking for.
Decentralizing
Yeah.
education, decentralizing all this stuff. And I mean, talking about Joe Rogan, we're going a bit off topic here, but Naval Ravikant came on, he was like, the world's going to become decentralized. Everyone's going to be self-employed essentially, and you're going to do projects, and you're going to hire people for a project, and then you'll come together for that. That's the way the world is probably going to go.
Yeah.
Same for like sports, same for education, same for all that shit.
Yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, Rick. But my experience with PED use in jiu-jitsu at the minute is like, on the club level, it's not a thing.
No.
Like all the brown belts, black belts at my club that have been doing this for decades, they don't have a clue. They're asking me, I've heard about TRT. Like, in fact, I've had a look at blood work of 2 guys at mine that would qualify, and they're over 50, and they're leaving me for dead in about 6 seconds. I mean,
again, skill component, isn't it?
Precisely, yeah. But I'm sure at the higher levels, I haven't had a lot of exposure to the higher levels. A little bit, and from guys that do use PEDs, yeah. And it's almost like 15 years ago on a forum.
Big time.
It's like I'm doing a Miller test, 3D bowl, and a Miller Decker, something like that. Yeah. Think, someone become the PED coach for BJJ.
There's a lot of
players.
gap in the martial arts area, of like nutritionally, training wise, because they're so good at what they do, and it proves what we were saying before, that like the other stuff does help, of course, and especially at an elite level, but just doing the specific to what you want to get better at has major outcomes.
Is it Josh Saunders that you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw, by the way, he is sick.
Yeah, he's a
didn't he
legend.
get his like brown belt in 20 months or something?
Quick.
Mad.
When I was doing like a business mentoring course with him, and he'd only been doing jits for like, I think like a year, sorry if I butcher it. And he was like already undefeated with all his roles. He's a killer.
Insane. He's black belt now, right?
I don't think he's a black belt yet.
Still brown belt.
Yeah.
He got his brown belt quick time. He's rolling with Gordon Ryan. I watched that match as well, and he held it down, man.
He's a big boy.
He held it down.
He's a big boy, yeah.
Unreal. Yeah, but anyway, more to the point, I saw an ad come up on my Instagram. My phone had been listening to me, and it was Josh. He was saying like, what you need is a personalized program. So he's doing like this online, what looks like group coaching. I'm like, yeah, because that's what, like in jiu-jitsu, there's none of this
because he was an online coach beforehand. That's how I knew him.
So he's adapting.
So it's almost like he's grabbed that and filled that gap.
Good.
Yeah, 100%.
I might sign up, bro.
Yeah, man. I've had one of my clients has done that, and he said it was great. So yeah, man. Like, and on the PD side of the BJJ level, like, same thing. It's just like any other region, like converting with people at the gym that don't know what they're talking about, kind of thing. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people do it to like level up their game, other than just like they just were going to do it regardless, kind of thing.
I think more than anything, these people are just searching for recovery because, God, it's like, I'm so beat up all the time, can't roll like I used to, my shoulder hurts. It's like, if we could get these people, even on just TRT, GH, like 2 units, some prophylactic TB 500, your health outcomes would probably improve, because these guys are smashing themselves into the floor, man. Constantly.
I've actually seen like slightly different sides of what you guys mentioned. So I obviously posted we're at Grapple Max Strong event on Saturday, and I had quite a lot of people in the DMs being like, there's so much misinformation in PEDs, loads of guys in my club are using, and I think it possibly, and this is, again, I'm an outsider to BJJ like completely, but from what I can gather, there's like an old school kind of way of like the gyms work, there's like a new school approach. And the new school approach to me is like, similar in rugby, you used to have like the old school private schools, and you had the academies, and the academies like the young blood, like almost like football academy type way. I'm seeing like a similar vibe within BJJ world, where they want to fucking compete and they want to be as competitive as possible. And those guys are the ones that have got the shit information with the PEDs. That's what I'm sort of seeing from my limited knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know, because I've only ever been exposed to one small, tight club.
Yeah.
You know?
And I found like nutritionally a lot as well. Like they don't actually look at their nutrition from this could help me like be a better jiu-jitsu player. So if they just like honed in on a few variables, like actually eating before rolling and things like that. Like so many of them, like I haven't eaten since 10 o'clock this morning, and we'll be rolling at like 6 o'clock.
Well, you met Joe, didn't you?
Yeah,
Joe Addy. So shout out Joe if you're watching this. You're probably not. One of them guys that doesn't have Instagram. Crazy, I know. He's purple belt. I do privates with Joe, or at least I did before my shoulder was knackered. And I just like offered to help with his nutrition and get him resistance training. Like 3 days a week, rotating an upper, lower, ABA, you know, something simple, and just getting to know what his maintenance calories are, because he's a weight class competitor. He competes at, is it 59 kilos?
It was low.
Yeah, low, lightweight, right? Lightweight.
Oh, so the guy you showed me the other day?
Yeah. And Yeah, he's absolutely sick though.
Yeah, he says
Like
meds.
the weight difference, I'm nearly double his body weight, and he cooks me up every time. I can last longer than I used to. Every time I roll with him, he goes like, "Bro, man, you're getting so tough." I'm like, "Bro, I mean, you've tapped me 3 times in the 5-minute round, but But anyway, like just getting him eating like nutrient dense foods and isolating some carbohydrates around his workout, his physique has like morphed. He sent me a before and after the other day of him with the same weight in like a month. His rolls are so much stronger, quicker, faster. And you're like, man, if you guys, because it was the most basic thing ever, maintenance calories with a little bit more protein.
You say this, right? So I've done quite a bit with like sports stuff and people that worked at like very high level football, rugby, English rowing. The information that the guys are doing, it's awful. Like as in like not the coaches themselves, they're great, but the athletes, like again, just getting to eat some fruits and vegetables, getting to eat some carbohydrate, like the
no
guidelines.
carbs, but you want to be an athlete.
Bro, the no carbs thing. That's what Joe was saying when he came around. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that you should just eat like meat and oil around training." I was like, "For jiu-jitsu, man, like the most glucose intensive. Like these guys go and roll for 2 hours."
Yeah.
So this is it. This is a lot of misinformation, and the thing that people forget about like sport coaching, these people don't want to necessarily resistance train or don't want to be bothered about nutrition. They just want to be really good at the sport.
Yeah.
And like people say, "Oh, what was it like working in pro sport?" I'm like, imagine getting a bunch of people that don't want to do what you're trying to sell them, and they're getting paid significantly more than you are. To do a job. It's pretty fucking hard.
Yeah, I think the number one, like you said, they don't want to resistance train, but if there was one adjunct that I could put that would facilitate improvement in most sports, it would be resistance training.
Well, it's strength kills, isn't it?
When I had my shoulder scan yesterday, he said, and look, I'm not big. This isn't me. This isn't a humble brag. He was like, the only thing that saved you from breaking your AC joint would have been the size of your traps and your medial delt. Because I've tore the supraspinatus right next to the AC joint and all the ligaments around it. But the bone's fine. He said, like, just because of what's surrounding it and where I landed, probably wouldn't. And I mean, how many AC joint breaks do you hear of or fractures in jiu-jitsu, man? They happen all the time.
Common.
Like when I landed, 4 people in the room said, "Oh, I've done that." It took me X amount of months to come back. You know, I reckon another month I'll be okay.
Thank God for peptides.
Yeah.
Oh,
should
And Joe's
we
just
talk about
willingness.
recovery protocols? Because I don't think we've spoken about this
Yeah,
much.
probably not, to be fair.
We have done videos on like BPC and TB 500 before, just as like a brief overview. They work great for things like soft tissue injuries. I'm not sure. Well, there isn't any data on this, and I'm not sure what their efficacy would be. And by not sure, I'm not saying like I doubt it's efficacious. Like I don't know for things like bone.
I think there's someone TB500, is there not?
There might be. I haven't seen it. On BPC, I'm pretty confident there isn't.
I'm not saying I only seen like burns and scar and cut healing, but I'm gonna have to look into this. So maybe I'll come back on this on a future video. I think the TB500 or TB508 or something. I think there is some data, but I will check.
I don't know what that TB 508
Well, this
is.
is what I didn't know, but someone showed me the other day, and they said it's quite compelling data. I was like, okay, I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah, so TB 500, essentially we're talking thymosin. It's a synthetic version of thymosin something.
I'll get on Google now.
So I believe, because I think this might not be true, but anyway, that this is an endogenous peptide that's secreted by the thymus, is it, in response to injury? And we can essentially inject supraphysiological levels of this. But if you're going to break down the MOA of both BPC and TB500, for the most part, they're working via angiogenesis, which is basically creation of new blood cells. And then you think blood can deliver nutrients to a site that doesn't otherwise have a great deal of blood flow, which I think is why these shine for things like tendon, ligament and whatnot. We don't really have a good view of like what the max dose would be for these things because, again, they're endogenous peptides and the trials haven't been done. But talking about like efficacious dosing that I haven't seen side effects from, TB500, I tend to do... So what I'll tell you guys what I personally did, and this is me, like, no holes barred, I throw everything at this, costs no thought. You know, TB500, as soon as I could get hold of it after the injury, I did 5 milligrams straight away. Sub-Q, you don't have to do it local, whatever like that. The anti-inflammatory effects of TB500 are very noticeable. I noticed it the same day, pain reduction. Now, the half-life of TB500 is estimated, it's like 2 to 4 days. So you likely want to pin it like twice a week. But a big bolus dose once a week is still going to have good effects. But I did 5 milligram bang, and then since then, 2.5 milligram twice a week. That can get pretty expensive pretty quick. But like I say, I wanted to just sort this out straight away. BPC 157, a solid dose I've had return on investment with clients, because I've never actually used it because I've never had an injury myself, but I've used it many, many times.
I'm the same. Like I kind of want to test it out because I've had miracle things with clients.
Yeah, well, I've had clients that have noticed nothing versus, oh my God, this stuff's incredible.
Yeah.
How much is placebo? How much is, I don't know. But, 250 microgram twice per day shot locally is, now it doesn't need to be local. There was that rodent study where they put it in the feed, they put it in the drink, they put it in local intratendon injections. I believe in the study that actually, I think it was the Achilles, they pulled it off the bone. And then to see...
Injecting straight into the Achilles.
And it actually reattaches, which is pretty insane. There was efficacy in all of these, but I don't know what the significance between... I can only imagine that local shots would work better, but it has to go systemic anyway. Regardless, whatever you choose to do, probably a good idea to go local. So I've been doing 1 milligram, so 500 micrograms twice per day shot right into the tendon, which is pretty nice, man, because I've torn the bloody thing. So I know precisely when the end of that pin gets in there, because it's like...
It's giving me a bit of like, ugh.
Yeah.
Fuad was actually speaking about that on Bro Chat when he had I think it was when he tore his tricep, and he thought he had to, like, there was no, like, you could inject it anywhere and it'll go to that site. And he's like, I would have used it more, but it hurts so much injecting on the tendon.
Oh, man, it's so bad.
It's good that you got the option, but probably, like you said, better to go straight in.
Yeah, I reckon you just grin and bear it, man, because, like, if you can, like, I'd drag my face through a mile of glass to get this recovered in a week,
I looked at that peptide real quick. It was TP508, and there was rat study showing quicker bone healing.
Oh, interesting.
Obviously, we'll have to look at that. Like that was me with
look at it for what it is.
That was a 2-minute PubMed
single surrogate model.
Yeah, I'm not convinced we all go and inject this shit now, but I mean,
the same should be said for TB500 and BPC 157 though.
Yeah,
we are just basing this off surrogate model data. I sit on here all the time and say, don't use research chemicals. Here I am pinning to them. But the risk to reward for me on those two is like, I literally can't do the only things that I like to do.
There's also the other points, like some really low hanging fruit before we even talk about peptides is don't be in a deficit, have a high protein diet, rest, low stress, all these things. Like stress is one of those biggest, like massive factor for injury recovery. If you're stressed, you will take so much longer. So like double down on all your, I guess, stress management, which you've done. Yeah. You've done that. Like
pharmacologically as well, there's some low hanging fruit. Estrogen.
Yeah.
Estrogen, increases in estrogen always directly correlate with increases in bone mineral density and tendon and ligament integrity. Another reason to keep your estrogen higher if possible. So don't ablate your estrogen. That's for sure. And also recombinant human growth hormone.
Yeah.
Great clinical efficacy in humans, not only for bone, tendon, ligament, but soft tissue wound healing as well, burns victims, things like that.
Yeah.
So I typically do 3 units of growth a day. I just moved it to 4 times because I don't want to like start banging in a load of drugs when it's not going to serve me well. And also I've been double dosing the Support Max joint.
Yeah.
The one joint formula I can confidently say is dosed with clinical efficacy with research to back every single ingredient. And again, potent anti-inflammatory. Like it does have a notable subjective effect. I'm pretty good with placebo. I know if I'm going to placebo and nocebo myself, and that does make a difference. So that's basically what I've been doing alongside another thing that has no clinical efficacy, but a really interesting... No. See, that's also what I've been doing, right? There's layers to this protocol. Right, no, firstly, I want to talk about massage guns.
Oh, no.
I did a
We've slated this before as well.
Yeah.
I'll put my hand up, man.
Well, no,
Can be wrong.
I've never slated it. I've reported what the data said.
Yeah. Okay. We reported what people didn't want to hear.
Well, no, because you guys on
They're not
Physique
as good as you
Collective,
might think they are.
if you're on Physique Collective, search foam roller or massage gun, because what I did, I got every single study ever published on massage guns and foam rollers, and I went through the study design and the findings, and every single study showed like no change to structural tissue and things like that, no improvement in injury outcomes, which I still believe would be true. But, so Big Daddy, shout out Big Daddy, Ryan Kirkham, if you guys don't know Big Daddy, he very kindly bought me some nice products last weekend, unnamed produce. And he also brought me down his massage gun to try. And so I'm really limited in range with my arm because everything is so inflamed. I just can't move it. And I was showing Rick earlier, I did the massage gun for 20 minutes, like across my pec, over the supraspinatus, which, Jesus Christ, horrible, my traps. and I tripled the range that I could work my shoulder through just from like pushing blood in there with that.
And the reduction in like the pain in his face dropped dramatically as well.
Interesting.
So maybe for range of motion stuff.
It is something I've noticed with clients as well, that like they might send me a photo, hey, I got a massage gun, and like I'm going to be like super pumped about it. I'm like, it's okay. If you, but then they'll say like, I notice a benefit.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, the research might say, but like if you enjoy it, you could justify it, have fun, man. Yeah.
Do you think that's like a Golgi tendon organ thing, or do you think that's...
I don't know. I literally think it was just, I think it's skeletal muscle inflammation around the damaged tissue. Because like I can feel how it feels like I'm constantly shrugging on my right side.
Yeah.
And when I like dug out my trap, it just allowed me to move my arm.
So I was wondering if it's like switching that off, so to speak, so you're not getting that like sort of almost like stretch tension response.
Yeah, well, that's a good example of no matter what the research data says it works, I'm going to do it anyway.
Well,
So, and that's like, that is as evidence-based as you can get.
Well, this is the same for that. I've said about the ice bath for ages. If you fucking like it in the morning and it gets you off for the day, I don't want to do it, but like if that gets you going, absolutely do it. That's it. I can't put an argument against that. Like,
yeah, you like a cold shower, don't you? There's a few times Rick's been staying with us. I've like turned the shower and got in there and be like,
I do the cold
I've been
shower.
nice there, I'll put it back to the middle. But at least I know that. That's funny.
I do the cold shower. I like that as I get out because it makes like I'm awake. But the idea of jumping into a cold bath on my terrace, I'm like,
forget that.
Absolutely not.
In Bali, it is so unbelievably common to see guys train, and girls train, and then just go straight in the cold plunge. Like,
Yeah, that's definitely not a good idea.
That's not what you want to be doing. You lose the games, bro. What are you doing?
and then you'll try to argue with them, and they won't. You know, it's
It's
like,
their
oh,
life,
do you
right?
do you?
You do, absolutely.
Yeah, I've been avoiding my infrared sauna because of
The sperm stuff.
because there is good solid data to show that it does reduce sperm count and motility. So I've been out of it because that's one of my primary goals now. But admittedly, I have hopped in twice since this injury.
Feel good?
It feels good. There's no data to show that it accelerates recovery. It did drop off inflammation quite nicely. And something I've been mentally struggling with is, so when I go to jiu-jitsu, it's hard aerobic work and I sweat a lot.
Yeah.
And I love that feeling.
Yeah.
And losing that,
Sweat component.
has been like, everyone knows when they get out of the sauna, and if you've really grin and bared a really hot heat for a long time, your heart is pounding. You drip like, it gives me that same...
Well, it's still, I hate this word, but it does rid toxins. It's your biggest organ,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it drops oxidative stress really well. I quite often use a protocol with clients where I'll have them like consume S-acetylglutathione and then go in the sauna as this kind of oxidative stress reduction protocol, especially if they're dealing with some kind of illness.
Here's a question for you then. There's no way we can quantify this, but I just wonder. So we're talking about stress management. Do you think the sauna is in isolation a benefit, or do you think it's you're giving some time and you're chilling out and it's lower stress?
I think both.
Yeah.
And also probably, because I know Joe's gone in the sauna, I said like, oh, how long you gone in for? And I'll try go in for the same time after him, and I'm like dying. So I reckon probably the mental challenge of it as well.
Yeah, there's so many aspects. Yeah, well, there's the hormetic side of things there for sure, but then also the resilience that it can build. I mean, talking about resilience, sat in my nice sauna in my, but you know,
in the trenches.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. Yeah, in the
getting
trenches,
in my
bro.
cold giant massage top shower.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is so hard.
I'm living the dream, man. Yeah. Fucking hell.
But yeah, that, and also I've got a PEMF infrared and red light panel.
Panel.
Yeah, that I've been doing like 15 minutes a day on there. There is some data, early doors kind of data, but right now I'm thinking, I don't care, man. I will do anything.
Makes you feel good. Yeah. Well, this is the most random thing I've heard, and again, I would need to. This is one of the things you hear, and I'm always conscious when I say this. I'm like, I just heard this, and I've seen a little bit of data. You're going to hate this, Joe.
Sunning your balls.
No, I was going to say.
I thought you were going there.
I was going to say cats purrs is at a frequency which apparently increases bone and tendon healing. It sounds ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
I know, but it is a thing there.
Have you got cats?
I had cats growing up.
Well, there you
I got injured less when I used that.
Bro.
Not the fact I was younger.
I remember seeing something where it's like patting a dog like releases serotonin.
Yeah.
So when I'm patting a dog now, I was like, getting that serotonin
fucking
boost.
getting
It's suddenly just got a bit too holistic in here for me, man.
I mean,
The Bali vibes
It's
have come
evidence,
in.
but yeah, I'm going to start.
Pseudoscience is
I'm going to get one
real.
of the crystals out in a minute.
We need to get some grass here and take our shoes off.
We're
boys.
nearly running up on time. One thing, I want to talk about the most asked question that I've received
Go on.
in the last month. And it's this, I don't know why. My God, I've had this question so many times. if you say you haven't, I'll be extremely surprised. And I think it's because we've been talking about myoreps so much. And when you combine myoreps with an obsession with tracking set volume, you get this question: how many sets is in a myorep? So I'm going to tell you guys now. There is no real accurate way to determine it, and you should 100% just auto-regulate. Just get a fair starting point, like one set with 2 myoreps or 3 or 4. I don't care. Auto-regulate it. Now, if you want an answer that's as close as we can scientifically get, I think the best model to use is Bourget's model, the effective reps model. He calls it the effective reps model, doesn't he? I think Paul Carter and Chris call it stimulating reps. I'll admit, I don't follow those two. That isn't like a stab. I just haven't ever got to. Bourget I do. So if we're going to use the effective reps model, and we say within myoreps, you train to about 1 rep in reserve, right? So you're going to say there's probably about 4 effective reps, right? And then a short rest. After that, really, if your reps are south of 5, which they should be, you're probably accruing purely effective reps in your myoreps. So let's say you do 2 on your first myorep, and then 2, you got 4 effective reps total. That's probably worth about 1 set. If you did 4 and 4, you've probably got about 2.
Yeah.
So it's going to be between 2 and 3 sets total with 2 myoreps, right?
I do it a little bit easier in terms of just the tracking, and this is purely on a logistical, I haven't got to think about it standpoint. However many mini sets I have is as many sets as I track it as.
I think that's pretty accurate. Let's say we're doing 3 mini sets, and I do the activation set. I've got like 4 effective reps there. The first mini set, I'm always going to get more reps typically. Let's say I do 4. So that's another set. And then I might get 2. Well, that's 3 sets total with 3 mini sets. I think that's pretty accurate.
I just do it for pure ease. And I've been doing them for years and years and years. And for me, that's the easier way to think about it. The only problem I've got is when I write it on a sheet for a client, I'm like, it's 1 sequence.
Yeah.
It's not 3 sequences.
You gotta like
I notice you write 1 and then 3 mini sets, whereas I do like MRP times 2 or MRP times, and then at the top I will explain what they are. The way you do it is better.
Because I've had honestly,
I've never had that question.
I've had it guys have gone, Matt, I'm absolutely fucked after the myoreps. I said, what do you mean? It's not that hard. And he's like, I've done like 4 different. I've done the sequence 4 times. I'm like, bro, no.
Yeah,
No wonder you're fucked.
That's like Dr. Mike style, man. When I see him do like 5 sets of lateral delts, all myorep match things, bro. That last one must have had like 8 rests in it.
Yeah.
Like
I did this for a client once. I already felt bad enough doing like a rest pause set on the hack squat. Yeah. Because like he just likes that mental, like just in the trenches. And I said do like 3 rest pauses. And he did that 3 sets with 3 rest pauses. Smoked. He said, bro, I'm fucked. My fatigue's so high. I can't function. And he explained, I'm like, no shit, no wonder. Like he had a whole other leg session to do.
So basically, don't worry about it. Just auto-regulate it. If you are insane, which I often am, and I like things like this, but we get back to that obsession with optimization.
Doesn't make a difference.
Just count the effective reps. So count all of the reps in the myorep sets. Equate that out. You train to 1 RIR. Estimate the additional amount of sets. Like I wouldn't have a problem with saying do myoreps until you reach the equivalent effective reps of 3 sets.
No, I like to auto-regulate it. To be honest.
Yeah, auto-regulate it. Based on actually how you feel in the day, I'd quite like to do that.
The only problem with that is if you're an idiot like me, you're like, I feel great. I feel fucking great. And you're like,
there's some people auto-regulation doesn't work on. I'm one of those people. Yeah. Whatever it says, I'm doing it.
My one advice to people doing myoreps, if you've got all of a sudden you've been listening to us talk about it, seen Bourget's work and got excited, my only advice is make sure that first initial set is a true 1 rep in reserve. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to smoke yourself, and the fatigue cost of the later movements, even though they're isolations, it will fuck you up because you'll end up getting 2 reps, 1 rep, and you're like you've kind of limited your work on subsequent sets. It's to get you close to failure and then hold you there,
and then if you're still doing like 8 reps on the final myorep, you didn't do it properly.
Yeah, and because you're saving so much time, it's really easy to excessively accrue per session volume as well. Like today, I did triceps, and really, in fact, I'll say this: if you're doing myoreps for a body part, you only need 1 exercise.
Yeah,
you know, if I did like a press down and then some kind of overhead katana extension or rope overhead extension or something like that, and I decided to do a myorep set, like a true myorep set with like 4 myoreps with like the traditional, like God, that'd be like 10 sets worth. It's too much, but it's so quick. It's easy to forget that.
That's when I spoke to Bourget, I sort of said to him, you can fall into that trap of thinking, and we all do it, more is more. But when it's my reps and they are saving time, I've done 10 my rep sets, I'm fucked. Well, yeah, you fucking will be.
Oh, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Sorry, this is going over an hour now. We'll be brief on this. We were talking about it earlier. Arm volume as it's counted in the published data and then how it's applied into programming. So a lot of you guys that read resistance training data will know that the volume for biceps and triceps is often counted as one set from, let's say, like a bench press or a pull down and things like that. And then when we use these kind of landmarks on volume, we often, and I'm not saying that you should do that, just that's how you should interpret the data. So like where we say, okay, 10 to 20 sets, I don't use that range, but let's say we're going to use that range. Or forget it. If you're looking at a per session volume, let's say you're going to say, you train twice a week, maybe something like 4 to 6 sets per body part per session. Yeah, if you're going to look at that, that might not mean, if you're basing it off that data, 4 sets of direct bicep work. You know, that might mean some equivalent from your pull down and row work, and then and whether, I know some people count it as 1, some people count it as half. Again, I don't think it matters as long as you auto-regulate, but I do think that most people over-egg the direct arm work.
Yeah. Well, I said to you when we programmed yours, I said, I've just found over time, less is more. Like less seems to be more from a recovery standpoint. And certainly something I've found over the years, I can only do biceps twice a week. I used to do it like 4 or 5 and like seen pretty good response just twice. Or like three sets or 4 sets.
Taps so frequently across the week.
Yeah, especially
I
if
just
you're doing
learned
a lot
this
of back
today.
work. Yeah.
I didn't know they counted the sets like that. So that just throws a spanner in the works.
A body part that I don't think is like that is lateral delts.
No, they can get a hammer.
30 sets.
I mean, your programming, we have you doing 2 straight sets and 1 my rep set. See how I'm remembering his programming off by heart?
What a coach. What a coach.
That's what everyone was the same.
He said, I did notice that actually from Michael's program.
I know for a fact you two have got completely different programs. But yeah, you do like 2 straight sets and then 1 almost like DC style rest balls, you know, the 2 rest balls. It's like every, is it 6 days, like 5 or 6 days is on the rotation.
So fun.
Yeah, so it's like pretty low volume there. And the progressive overload flies.
It's definitely been the most rapid I've seen my progressive overload.
And what does that mean? Greatest level of adaptation. There we go.
And yeah, the benefits of keeping an open mind to that too.
We're always learning, mate. We're all learning. We won't go into it today, but we've been wrong about so much shit, but you just keep getting better, don't you?
That's the fun of it too. Like you're never going to have it all worked out.
That is the fun of it, man. Yeah, that's what, you know what, that's what I love so much about jiu-jitsu. That I don't.
Just being a student.
I know.
Always white belt.
Every session I go to, I realise even more how little I know about this.
Dunning Kruger, man. You're at the bottom of the curve.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's funny, I was saying that to Kez, black belt, and he was like, man, one of the worst things about being a black belt is realising that you still know nothing about this thing. Like, I heard someone describe it as like, when you're a white belt looking out over the ocean, you're thinking about how little you don't know in terms of the surface. When you become a black belt, you realise that there's the whole depth that you need to cover now.
And it's like if you're worried and looking at other people thinking they've got it all figured out, it's like they're just learning and winging it as well.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy for life.
Yeah, so we can end it on that one.
Yeah.
Drop mic.
Guys, thank you for watching. Excuse me, as always. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. All of the things that you can do, please do the things. And we will catch you in the next Doghouse chat. Peace out.